I'm Kaylee, and these are all the books that I read in August. I had a massive TBR in August. I wanted to read 23 books in the month of August. And I'm here to tell you, I did not read 23 books. I read 27 books, and somehow I still did not get all the reading done that I wanted to do. Out of those 27 books, I read 7 manga, 2 classics, 2 nonfiction, 8 middle grade, 2 YA, 3 picture books, and 3 children's books. So a few of those weren't actually on my TBR, they just kind of ended up getting read in August. Before we dive into all the books, make sure that you subscribe and you give this video a like if you had a good reading month in August. And be sure to follow me over on Goodreads and Instagram and all the places. So first we're going to talk about the classics. I finally finished up listening to Return of the King, narrated by Andy Serkis. I have enjoyed this whole summer of listening to Lord of the Rings on audiobooks so much. It's my first time listening to Lord of the Rings instead of reading it physically, and I was amazed at how it really is a bit of a different experience when you're listening to the audiobook, especially because Andy Serkis is just such a brilliant narrator. I really loved it. If you want to hear more about how much I love Lord of the Rings, I have a whole huge playlist all about Lord of the Rings and Narnia and other books written by C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. So I will link that playlist up above and down below so that you can go over and just see all of my content all about Lord of the Rings, because I am a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. The other classic that I read was a modern children's classic, The Bronze Bow by Elizabeth George Spear. I believe this won the Newbery Medal in 1960 or 1961. So this is about a young man living in the time of Christ, and he hates the Romans because they crucified his father, and he vows to get revenge on the evil Roman Empire. But then he hears about this rabbi who teaches that we should love our enemies. Daniel just wants to hold on to his hatred. But when he meets Jesus, he is forced to re-examine his values and principles. This story has it all: action, adventure, romance, betrayal and sacrifice and loyalty. But the best part is the spiritual growth that we see as each person meets Jesus. This story is absolutely beautiful. It really inspired me, and I loved the scenes with Jesus. He's so warm and friendly and kind. It was absolutely beautiful. I gave it 4.5 stars. I finally finished reading Dorothy Sayers' The Mind of the Maker, and I've already done a whole nother video all about my super in-depth thoughts about Mind of the Maker, because this book completely broke my brain, okay? It blew my mind. Every chapter just blew my mind. And that's why it took me like 2 months to read it, because I would read a little bit and then I would have to like stop and think about it for 2 or 3 days. But I will link that video up above and in the description so that you can go over and see all the things in Mind of the Maker that completely broke my brain. And I gave it 5 stars because, I mean, it's Dorothy Sayers and she is completely brilliant. Another Christian book that I read was Dragonspell, which is a middle grade Christian fantasy. I just loved this book so much. There's magic and quests and dragons. But of course, the best parts are the spiritual themes and wisdom that runs throughout the book. So Kale is a young slave girl who is mysteriously drawn to dragon eggs. And she is sent on a quest to retrieve a valuable dragon egg from an evil wizard. But along her quest, she has a lot of learning to do. She really doesn't have very much education. She has no experience of the world outside her little village. So as she is learning about this fantasy world, we as the reader are also learning alongside her. She learns about new races of people similar to elves and dwarves, and she learns to draw on the magical ability inside herself. But most importantly, she learns to trust in God. I really loved Kale's character development. The world building is so imaginative. And of course, I loved all the dragons. It's really humorous. It's absolutely brilliant. I am definitely going to be reading the rest of the series very soon. One of my wrapped books was The Long Secret by Louise Fitzhugh. I think this is the second book in the Harriet the Spy series. I did not care for the first book of Harriet the Spy, but I thought, well, let's just give it a chance. And it was horrible, and I hated it, and I gave it 1 star. I just really hate Harriet. She is so selfish. She's so self-centered, and she sneaks around spying on people. So I don't know. She's just such an unsavory person. Just really, really hated this book. So, there you go. I also read the first book in the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan, The Hidden Oracle. In this book, Zeus punishes Apollo by turning him into a human mortal. And Apollo must complete various trials and serve a demigod in order to regain his godly status. The problem is that there's something wrong with the Oracle. The Oracle can't see the future. I really loved the hilarious narration from Apollo's perspective. He is just completely ridiculous, and I was laughing through most of the book. It was delightful to see just a few scenes from Percy Jackson and Leo Valdez and some of our favorite characters. They just have these little cameo appearances for 1 or 2 scenes, but it has all the sass and the sarcasm that I love. We also see a few scenes with Will Solis and Nico D'Angelo, who are now dating in this book. Apollo admits that he likes to see his son in a gay relationship because Apollo himself is bisexual. But we don't see very much from those characters because they're all off, having adventures. And most of the book is focused on Apollo. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. Then I continued on to read the second book in the Magnus Chase series, which is The Hammer of Thor. So Magnus and his friends are tasked with finding Thor's missing hammer, which they think has probably been stolen by the giants. But as usual, Loki has his own mysterious plans in the works. Loki is up to all his old tricks, and it will take all of Magnus's courage and resourcefulness to retrieve the hammer without getting killed by the giants. I kind of had mixed feelings about this second book in the Magnus Chase series. I liked the characters, I liked all the fun magical adventures and the Norse legends of the old gods, but there were a few things that really annoyed me, and it was difficult for me to get past that and just enjoy the adventures. One thing I really loved was the continued character development for Magnus. He's learning more about his new friends and just kind of discovering they all have their own past and their own burdens to bear. He tries his best to support them, but he ultimately feels helpless. But I just loved seeing his compassionate heart and how protective he is over his friends. Magnus is also very confused about his own family story and his own heritage and legacy. So it was really interesting to see him just struggling with this and trying to come to grips with his place in his family history. This book also introduces Alex, a gender-fluid character. She is a child of Loki, so they can shapeshift, but they say that they can't really control what their gender is from day to day or even from minute to minute. And there are a lot of scenes where other characters kind of have a conversation with Alex about being gender fluid. However, because this topic is thoroughly canvassed over and over, it ended up feeling like the author is just preaching to you about gender ideology. It slowed down the plot, and I didn't feel like it really fit in with the rest of the story. So I think it was poor storytelling, and it could have been handled in a better way. Still, I really enjoyed all the Norse legends and the gods and the fun magical adventures, so I ended up giving this book 3 stars. Another one of my wrapped books was Pennyroyal Academy. This is about a girl with no name who arrives at Pennyroyal Academy to be trained as a princess. She is given the name Cadet 11, and her friends shorten it to Evie. Gradually, Evie begins to realize that being a princess is not what she imagined, because the princesses are at war against the witches and the dragons. And they're all being trained to fight and use magic in the war. This was a fun and imaginative story. I really liked Evie's character development. In the beginning, she's full of fear, but she finds the fortitude and the courage that she needs in really dangerous circumstances. However, I felt like her entire character growth was just finding her courage and she didn't really grow in any other ways. No other aspects of her personality were really explored. There were a lot of plot twists that were exciting and surprising, but then they kind of left plot holes that were just never explained. There were just a lot of little details that didn't quite make sense. I liked the world building though. I thought the writing was okay. It's not amazing, but it's not bad either. For the most part, I enjoyed the story. I liked the characters. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. I ended up rereading the life-changing manga of Tidying Up because I was going through my drawers and getting rid of some old things. And especially, I have a lot of craft supplies, okay? And I was just going through all the drawers of craft supplies and getting rid of some stuff that is just like old and dried out and I have not used it in years. So I was like, you know what? I need like some inspiration to declutter a little bit. And so I went back and reread the life-changing manga of Tidying Up. I have always loved this manga. I think it's so cute and adorable, and it's very inspiring and fun, and it just kind of fills me with like this inspiration to declutter. And it gives you a lot of really good practical advice about decluttering. I gave this one 4 stars, and I got my craft drawers all decluttered. Another wrapped book was The Dragon of Cripple Creek. So Kat is taking a tour of the Old West in Colorado, and they go on a tour of a mine, and she gets separated from the tour group and falls down a mine shaft, and she goes wandering around in the mines and the caves, and she finds a dragon sitting on a pile of gold. She steals a nugget of gold, tricks the dragon into showing her the way out of the mines. By this point, there are firemen and police and EMTs all over the place and reporters. And then when the reporters are all around her, the golden nugget falls out of her pocket. And now everybody knows there's gold in them thar hills. The situation just escalates and they're talking about blasting open the mines, and Kat is terrified they're going to find the dragon, kill the dragon, accidentally blast the dragon with dynamite. So she keeps trying to figure out a way to get past these swarms of people that are now around the mines, and reporters and picketers and activists and stuff. She's trying to find a way back in so she can warn the dragon, and just craziness ensues. Everybody is greedy for the gold. The only parts of this book that I really liked were like the 2 scenes with the dragon, because the dragon was very well done. And there were a couple of scenes with Kat and her family, especially with her brother, where they're very vulnerable and emotional with one another. The whole family is grieving because Kat's mother was in an accident a couple years before, and now her mother is in a coma. And so the whole family is kind of grieving for this trauma that they've been through. So when we had those scenes of family togetherness, I really loved that. But the rest of the book was entirely too long-winded. The writing just is very slow-paced. It just describes every little thing and every scene. And the writing is very witty, very clever. It's beautifully crafted. It's just the plot needed to get moving. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I finished reading the Reawakened Trilogy by Colleen Houck. I read the second book, Recreated, and the third book, Reunited. So in the first book, Reawakened, Lily meets this Egyptian prince, Amon. He and his 3 brothers have been reawakened so they can perform this ancient ritual before they spend another 1,000 years in the underworld, and then they're reawakened again to do the ritual to keep the god of chaos imprisoned. And of course, Lily and Amon fall in love and have all kind of adventures. Well, in the second book, Recreated, Lily must venture into the underworld to save her beloved Prince Amon. This one was interesting because now we see the 3 brothers kind of on their own home turf in the underworld. So in the first book, it's almost like they were kind of on vacation in the mortal world, but now we see them sort of like at work, where they're more serious and dutiful. In the first book, most of the focus is on Amon, who Lily falls in love with. But now in the second book, we get to know his brother Aston a lot better. He's a very complex and interesting character. He kind of opens up about these secrets from his past that he's been hiding from his brothers. And it really brings him closer to Lily and to his brothers as he kind of shares this vulnerability with them. I just loved all of the character development in this book. And then in the third book, Reunited, Lily has lost all of her memories of Amon and his brothers and all of their Egyptian adventures because, magical memory loss. And the god of chaos is now beginning his final battle against the Egyptian gods. And a goddess has hidden all three of the Egyptian brothers away so that they cannot be found by the god of chaos. And because Lily is in love with Amon, she's the only one who has this heart connection to be able to find them. So Lily sets off through the cosmos to find the lost brothers and her own lost memories. Finally, in this third book, we get to know Amos, the third brother, a lot better. So I really like that each book in the trilogy kind of focuses on one of the three brothers. Amos and Lily end up traveling together through much of the book, and they grow closer and really open up their hearts to one another. Amos is much more quiet and steady. He's not as passionate, or at least not as expressively passionate as his brothers. And so Lily really comes to rely on that steadiness from him. One of the things I really loved about his character is that he's willing to make these big sacrifices and make the big gesture, but he also does these little things that shows that he cares about people. So there's this one particular scene that sticks in my mind. They are tired and hungry. They have been trekking for days, and they finally arrive at a camp, and they are welcomed, and a feast is set out for them. And Amos goes to the table first, and he piles a plate with all kinds of food, and then he turns and he hands the plate to Lily. As exhausted and hungry as he is, he puts other people's comfort before his own. And that simple gesture says everything about his generous character through the entire series. So I was a little bit disappointed that the ending was very quick. Everything just kind of wraps up really quickly at the end. I needed a bit of a slower denouement, but the ending was just kind of jarring because everything just, whoa, okay, I guess that's the end. The ending also has the most blatant Deus ex machina that I have ever read in my life. It's almost hilarious because this all-powerful goddess pretty much just shows up and just grants everybody's wishes. It's like, poof, you're resurrected from the dead. And poof, now you have magical powers. And poof, the bad guy is now defeated. But then I was thinking about it and thinking, that is kind of a commentary on the entire story. Because throughout all their adventures, Lily is not really in charge of her own fate. The gods admit that they have put her through all these trials and adventures to test her, to see if she is worthy. So of course a goddess just shows up at the end and does whatever the hey they want because they've been doing that through the entire series. In a way, I guess the heroes have earned their happy ending because through all their trials and suffering, they have proven that they are worthy of the gifts of the goddess. Despite the quick ending, I still really loved this trilogy. I loved learning about all the Egyptian gods and goddesses and the ancient legends. I loved the characters and the magic and the adventures. And I did like the ending. I just felt like it could have been a little bit better constructed. I gave this entire trilogy 4 stars. I've also really enjoyed rereading through the Ouran High School Host Club manga series. I read 6 of those volumes in August and just loved the ending of this series. This is only my second time reading through it, and so there are a few of the little details here and there that I had kind of forgotten. And so it was really delightful to go back and kind of remember some of these fun scenes. And I just love the ending. It's so adorable. I pretty much just laughed my way through the entire series because it's so ridiculous and hilarious. And I love every single one of these characters so much. And the ending is just, perfection. 5 stars all the way. The rest of the books in this video are books that were sent to me from a publisher in exchange for a free and honest review. I read The Secret Starling by Judith Eagle. The orphan, Clara Starling, lives with her mean old uncle in a huge tumble-down mansion. But one day, without warning, he abandons her, leaving her with only a small bundle of cash. So Clara decides to live on her own and enjoy the freedom of having no grown-ups around. And then a young boy named Peter shows up at the door claiming that her uncle had set up for him to come and visit for 2 weeks while his grandmother is ill. The 2 children explore the manor and they discover this old tattered ballet slipper. They set out to follow the mystery of the ballet slipper, thinking it must have belonged to someone in the Starling family. But they find that the Starlings have a terrible past, full of murder and lies and secrets. This story is full of mystery and fun. I really liked the characters and all the wacky adventures. I really loved Clara's character. She's warm and friendly, and she's just starved for attention and love. However, I had some serious problems with Peter's character and their friend Amelia Ann, the next door neighbor girl. So there is this scene where Peter and Amelia Ann both shoplift from stores, and then they proudly display the items that they have stolen. They just laugh like it's a big joke, and Clara goes along with it because she wants to fit in. This shoplifting is never addressed again in the story. They don't return the items, they don't feel any guilt, they don't get in trouble, they never get punished for it, they don't confess or ask forgiveness. They just trip merrily along in the rest of their adventures with no consequences for breaking the law. And these are the good guys. Like, these are the heroes of the story. I was just so disappointed in the very poor morals of this story. The writing is charming and lighthearted. The chapters just fly by. I read this in one day because the story just captures your attention. It captures your heart, which made the whole shoplifting scene even more disappointing because I loved the rest of the story. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. I reread the first book in the Witchlings series. In this book, Seven is a young girl who is worried that she's not going to be sorted into the same witches' coven as her best friend. However, she never imagined that she would be a spare, a witch with no coven at all. Seven and the other two spares are set an impossible task to defeat a night beast, or else they will lose their magic forever. I loved the magic system, I loved the world building, I loved the characters. The writing style is really humorous, the world building gives you like this sense of magical history, and we get to explore deep themes about friendship and family and love and compassion. There are a lot of really wonderful, complex characters, but Seven gets the best character development. And as we kind of get to know the other characters through Seven's perspective, as she begins to realize, people are really more complicated and more nuanced and layered than you imagine, then we, the reader, are discovering those things about the other characters as well. There's one minor character who is a lesbian, and she introduces her girlfriend to the other characters, but they're only in one scene. However, those characters come back in the second book, and then we get to know more from them. So the first book in the Witchling series, I gave 4 stars, and then I went right ahead to the second book, The Golden Frog Games. In this book, Seven and her friends Valley and Thorn are excited to participate in the Golden Frog Games, which is basically like the Magic Olympics. However, someone has been hexing the other participants. The friends start to investigate the attacks, but Seven is distracted because she is also hiding a secret that she worries could ruin her magical abilities. The best thing about this second book is seeing the friendship between Seven and Valley and Thorn really being tested. They go through some very difficult circumstances, and their connection is just tested to its limit. Seven is used to being the strong leader. She's used to having the answers and being able to do all the things. But she's finding that it's really tough to always have to be the strong one, and she has to learn to ask for help. In this second book, there are quite a lot of LGBTQ characters. The director of the Magic Games is a drag queen. Valley actually enters into a lesbian dating relationship. And Poppy is a minor character, and it's mentioned that she has 2 moms. And as I mentioned, we see the same lesbian couple from the first book. They return in the second book and have a few more scenes. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I also read The Lost Library. Evan is intrigued when someone starts a little free library, but all of the books in there are from the old library that burned down like 20 years ago. Evan begins to investigate who could have started the library fire all those years ago, and why was this group of books the only books that survived the fire. So this book has 3 different perspectives. We hear from Evan as he is trying to solve the mystery of the old library fire, and we have the perspective of an orange cat who has declared himself to be the guardian of the library. He is actually the only one who knows the secret of how the old library burned down, but he can't tell anyone because, well, he's a cat. He can't talk. And the third perspective is from one of the ghosts of the librarians who died in the fire. They try to help Evan solve the mystery, but the full extent of the truth might even surprise the ghosts. I just loved this book so much. I actually enjoyed the multiple POVs from different characters. It's really well written, and the whole book is just very hopeful and uplifting. I was laughing at the silly antics of the cat and some mice. And each character has these vulnerable moments when they open up to others. It was just really beautiful, especially because the way the characters talk about books and poetry. And you see this whole community coming together to support the little free library. Every chapter is a complete delight. I gave this book 4 stars. I also read From Achilles to Christ, Why Christians Should Read the Pagan Classics. This book explores how Christians can look back at the works of Homer and Virgil and see a universal longing for a savior, and how these myths actually point to the truth of Christ. I'm planning to do a whole nother video because I have a lot of things to say about this book. I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars. I feel like I will never look at history the same way again, and I have a lot of really lengthy things to say. So be on the lookout for that video coming soon. I'll try to remember to come back and put a link to the video in the description once that video goes up so that you can see all my super in-depth thoughts about From Achilles to Christ. And those are all the books that I read in August. Please leave me a comment and let me know which of the books that I read do you feel like, oh, I just have to put that one on my wish list. That one looks really good. Which one are you excited about reading? Or just tell me about a book that you've read recently that you really loved that I should put on my wish list. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.